but she interviewed people. Now, I was not privy to what was discussed or what questions were asked.
Right.
I just gave the contact information and she took it from there. So after she would finish the interview, she would send me, you know, what the interview was about. She wrote up everything and sent it to me. I found out more things about my father from her interviewing other people than I even knew about my father at all.
Wow.
So you could grow up with somebody, be in the household with him.
Right.
You know, he raised me, but he was in the street. That's the difference between sometimes a father that stays home all the time and always home versus a father that's home and also in the street.
Right.
So there's a difference.
The obligations are
totally different and you're raised different.
Right, and sometimes, you know, the streets take more than the home.
Yes.
Take, you know, the weight that weighs more than the home because the obligations are a lot more. Mm-hmm. And it's weird to say that, but it's the truth.
Yes, it is.
You know what I mean? But at the same time, y'all adjusted to that.
We had no choice. My father didn't, he allowed us to be ourselves, but he never wanted us to be punks. Let's just say that.
Right.
He made sure we was kind of, you know, we could stand our ground.
As you should, though.
And that makes me the woman I am today.
Yeah. Congratulations to that, too, because at the end of the day, knowledge is infinite. So what he taught you then, you probably didn't, you know, really grasp it until you got to a certain point. Like, okay,
exactly.
I got it.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And that's probably what he was doing with that's what he was doing with everybody else. So that's why he was so, your father was really everywhere. He was stretched out.
Yes, he was.
You know what I mean?
That's why he was never home.
Right. Now, did you ever think that took a toll on him? Did you ever see that taking a toll on him personally? Because sometimes, you know, so you saw that.
Yeah. There were times that he would come home and he was dead tired. I remember one time just jumping around when he had the S&S. So the S&S was a social club, an after-hour spot. You had to know someone to get in there.
Let's talk about it.
If you didn't know nobody, if you got in there and didn't know nobody or people, if they felt funny, you had to leave. And I know that there was one occasion where that happened. My father had a friend that came home from prison, and his cousin, and he allowed him to be on the door. And he let somebody in that nobody really knew. So from my understanding, they asked the guy to leave. And I guess he felt some kind of way, you know. I know I would have. I'm trying to come in a joint.
A spot that's popping.
Yeah.
Well known.
And from my understanding, he came back upstairs and he killed my father's cousin that was at the door.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, back then, I mean, we dealing with straight gangsters too. Let's just be clear.
True.
You know, we're not playing with knives. We're playing with real live killers and murderers. And, you know, back then it was do or die. You know what I mean? Reputation was everything. You know what I mean? So definitely is a whole nother different timing. But your father embraced that though. He knew that came with the game.
Yeah, but he was, that's when I really saw him. He was hurt behind that.
Right.
That hurt him to his core. Because although my father was in the street a lot, he was not a violent man.
Exactly, he wasn't.
He didn't like violence. He didn't want it around him. He was a very humble man. Although he could turn into two different people at any time.
As he has to.
So he could flip the coin at any time, but he was a very humble person. So by someone doing that, it really hurt him to his core. He was down for a while after that. He was down for a while because he had to bury him. He just came home and he had to bury him.
Right.
He had to call his family, you know, thinking that he's trying to help him get on his feet. Because he was the go-to person.
When you came home.
If somebody came home.
He had multiple locations, spots.
He had businesses. No question, he would give you a job, create a job for you.
Right. And that's just who he was as a person. But you know one thing about your father that I always was curious to know is like he always catered to the culture.
Always.
And he always catered to the younger crowd. Like and I'm gonna say us. Like he's like, I want y'all to have a spot to have fun, chill, enjoy. he knew he knew the people, but he wanted, I don't, because he could have catered to his age bearing, his age group.
He did a little of everything.
Yeah, but you know, most, and I'm only going by what my era saw. I saw us. You know what I mean? I'm quite sure the S&S back then was for the OGs and all that, and the Willies lounges. But like the rooftop and the Willies, like who would think you would stand in front of a burger joint and just stay there for hours? Who's doing that in 2023? Nobody.
I think the key to that, sorta, it was the culture, it was the environment.
Right.
And also, we got to pay homage to Kid Capri, because he was there on the side of the hamburger stand. That's where he started out with his little mixtapes.
Wow.
He came in over there one day, and it's discussed in my book. I even paid homage to him by giving him his own chapter called The Kid. And by him being there, it was like a one-stop shop. You copped your burgers,
your mixtape,
go to the car,
go to the bodega,
go to the
weed spot across.
There you go. And you just stood out there.
Get your car washed.
You get your car washed, you put your tape in, you listen to your tape, eating your burgers.
That was genius though.
With your crew.
The ladies would come through because they knew this is where all the hustlers gonna come.
They was out there in their finest.
On the corner.
On the corner.
And all weather. Let's be clear. The weather didn't stop it. Oh, whether it's summer, it's winter, and it's 20 below. I'm not going. No, we stand in front. We got our minks on. We got our coats. It was the show-off scene for the culture. Same thing with the rooftop. Yo, I gotta be in there. I want to be to say. And it's funny because now everything, you go everywhere. Everybody got a phone up. I can imagine if we could have did that back then, what you would have saw back then, because you had to be there.
You had to be there. I mean, we could discuss this and talk about this all day long, but if you was not a part of that era, I think that was the best era
of all time.
Of all times growing up. I really do, because it was a culture. If my mother saw somebody else's child on our block doing something they wasn't supposed to, she could whip his ass, check him, and take him home, and his mother would be okay with it. Can't do that now.
Or even worse, we would straighten our ass up until you got off that. Okay, she's gone. Let's get back to our monkey shit.
There you go.
And it was more respect back then too. The respect for the generations was totally different than, man.
Totally.
You might get a young kid to tell you, F you, what? You get out of here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, that what makes what you did, what your father did, what he established, makes it so iconic. And that's something I want to talk to you about, because now here you are. You're iconic. We got the merch. We got the If It Wasn't for Willies. We got the year. We got the book. Now, I want to dab into the book. What made you decide to write this book? Because I'm quite sure it was an up and down situation.
It was.
Personally, because now you're putting certain things out to the world, not to cut you off,
there you go.
But you're also dealing with personal issues that people don't know. Because at the end of the day, if we don't, people only know what you see.
That's true.
We see you up and down 8th, we see you here, we see you there. We don't see the home and the years and the, you know, you mentioned your pops doing some, you know, some time and not being home. Years later, decades later, you decided to let the world get a small taste of basically the inside.
Yeah.
And not everybody just kind of being on the outside. What made you decide to take that leap?
I started writing a journal back in, 2017, during the COVID era.
Okay.
And, you know, when everything shut down.
That was about 2020, though.
Yeah.
I don't want the culture, like 17.
I'm sorry. But I started my journal in 2017.
Okay.
So, during the COVID, when everything shut down, what I decided to do was I decided to write a journal, and I started to make it to where I can let go of everything that was bothering me or whatever over the years. Just put it in my journal, pour it in my journal. And I had that journal for years. So there was times that I would write in it, and then there was times that I didn't write in it. So the journal was my book. So what happened was a homegirl of mine came over, and she was, I had my laptop open, and she started reading some of it.
Your laptop.
Yeah, so she said, you should write a book. And I was like, get out of here, I ain't writing no book. That's my personal journal. And she said, no, but I'm serious, you should write a book. So what happened was, one day I got off of work, and I just decided, you know what, let me I'm the type of person, if I want to do something, I'm going to read up on it. I'm on the internet.
You're going to do your homework.
I'm doing my homework. I found a ghostwriter, and I wanted to find a particular ghostwriter that didn't really know about Willie Burgers, didn't know who my father was, and I found someone.
Why though?
Because that person would be biased. That person wouldn't tell me, you should put this in, and you should put that. She was very open. Once I did my introduction with her and told her who I was, and she asked me certain questions, and she asked me at the very first interview, what do you want the title of the book to be? And I said, if it wasn't for Willie. And she said, why? And then I explained why. She said, this is it. So I gave her access to my journal. I gave her my password, everything. And I told her to read it and get back to me the next day. The next day I contacted her. I said, so what did you think? She said, I'm gonna be honest with you. She said, you already wrote your whole book.
Wow.
She said, and I'm wondering, why are you hiring me? I said, because I've never written a book before, and I wanted somebody who had that knowledge that can, you know, keep me focused and make it happen. So she made it happen for me. She made it happen.
She did a great job too.
Yes, she did. Yes,
she did a great job to cover everything.
Shout out to Angie.
Shout out to Angie for that too. Now, you dab into the book. I'm gonna ask you a few things about that. Were you concerned about family members feeling a certain type of way about things that you wrote? Because you know, family.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes and no.
And I understand that because we all grown.
Yeah.
But you know, it's still that balance and that respect. You know what I mean? Of, you know, growing up. I'm quite sure a sibling, and you being the baby. That's why you being the baby, addressing all this.
Well, what I decided to do was keep all of my family out of it. This was my relationship with my father. Okay. So nobody can't tell me about my relationship with my father. None of my siblings can do that.
I think that was very smart.
They can have an idea, they can comment, but this was my relationship with my father, and that's what I wanted to talk about.
Because now it's not everybody else's point of view, it's your straight point of view.
Just my point of view.
Because he had a different relationship with each and every one of you differently.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
Okay.
So I wanted to keep that the focal point of my book, and I stressed that with her. And she told me that was very smart, because I wasn't stepping on anyone's toes.
Right.
You know, there might be things in there that they don't like that I said about him, but I was honest. There was times I didn't like him. There were times where me and my father didn't speak for years. There's things that I saw I didn't like, and I kind of shut down from him.
Right.
And that part was hard for me to write about, you know, because she was trying to talk to me and get certain things out of me, the ghostwriter, while she was writing. And there were times that I cried, because I'm human. And he wasn't a perfect father, but he didn't have to be perfect, because no one's perfect.
Right, but he was a great father.
Yes.
And a great man.
Yes. So when I released all of that, it was therapeutic for me, you know. He wasn't always there. He wasn't the greatest father. But as a child, when you grow up, when you grow up, you have to learn to reconcile and accept people for who they are. That's who he was. My father was a hustler.
Your father was Harlem.
Yeah.
Let's really be clear.
Yeah.
And I feel like what your father did for Harlem is I think, and I could be wrong, but I'm a thinker. Just certain locations where he had different spots, it's like those spots were the spots. So it's like he saw that. okay, we're gonna put this here because it's this amount of traffic coming from here. We're gonna put this here because we got this amount of traffic here. We're gonna cater to these people over here because we know with having this rooftop, we ain't gotta worry about the community around it having any issues outside with the traffic. I think it was all clever thinking.
Yes, it was. And what I will say is his name was his brand.
Of course.
All of his businesses had his name on it.
Why did he do that?
Because his name was his brand. And once you go to one location and you get the vibe of it and you liked it, then if he builds something else, you're following that name. That's what they're following, that name. Well, this place was the bomb. So I'm gonna go to this spot because I already know that place
Willie's got a new spot open over here.
There you go.
Yo, we gotta go try them out.
Yep. So that's his name was his brand. And
you know what? Back then, your name was everything. Yes. Let's be clear. That era and that time, your name was everything. You know what I mean? I'm quite sure you had those. You and your siblings. That's Willie's daughter. That's Willie's daughter.
Or people call me Lil Willie.
Right.
Nobody knew my name.
You had street security that you probably didn't even know about.
Ooh, speaking of that, there's also things that I discuss in the book about that, like certain situations, certain establishments I was at, and things happen, and then there would be someone approach me and say, "Don't worry about it. I know your father. Everything is okay," and just walk off.
I'm quite sure.
I didn't know these people.
Right.
Never seen them before.
You didn't care to ask them, but
nope. I will say this. I'll share this story.
Before you share this story, I want to ask one question to get back to that story.
Okay.
Do you feel like sometimes that was a gift and a curse?
Yes, it was. Both.
Okay.
It was both.
That's why you can share the story, but I had to ask that because it's like everybody knows me, but I don't want everybody to know me because I don't want everybody in, you know what I mean? It's that, because I'm quite sure that red carpet was constantly laid out in Harlem.
Yeah, there was a lot of establishments I never paid to get in.
Right.
You know, once I met, you know, people on my journey, and once they found out who my father was, till this day, like if I tell somebody who I am or whatever, they be like, oh, they'd salute me, you know, whatever the case may be. And I love it, but I'm not big head with that.
Right, because some people will use it to their advantage and run with it.
That wasn't me.
You were more or less, it's cool.
Yeah, that's how I am.
It's cool.
Yeah, very laid back, low key. I was in the street, but I wasn't in the street.
Exactly.
You understand what I'm saying?
I understand.
Yeah, I was in the street.
For those that don't understand, 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Yeah, and I knew what was going on, and I was privy to my surroundings, but I wasn't out there like that.
And you wasn't using the name to be a bully.
No, never that.
I never really took that from you. Like, you know, you know who my,
no,
or you know who my father is. Don't play. I don't feel like that was your angle. No, you know what I mean?
That was never me.
Let's take us to that spot that we were just about to touch on. We have to go there because the culture.
This is it. Although I shared a lot of stories in my book, if it wasn't for Willie, there's still a lot of stories that I didn't share because there were certain things I didn't want to put in the book. So there were certain things that were in my journal. Your journal is your journal. That's exactly. your life, your heart. You letting things out that nobody know about, that was sacred. So I left a lot of things out. But I do remember distinctly a cousin of mine. She called me one day and said, hey, I met this guy, I want to bring him by the house, you know. So I was like, all right, come through. She came to Jersey, and she brought the guy inside, and they came upstairs, and they sat in the kitchen. So I was in the kitchen cooking at the time. And he said, can I use the bathroom? So I was like, okay. I told him where the bathroom was down the hallway. For those who ever been in my house, right outside the kitchen, there was a big picture of my father standing next to a limousine because he also had a limousine service.
Wow.
And the guy just happened to look up, and he saw the picture, and he said, wait a minute. is that Mr. Willie? And I said, yes, that's my father. He